I just
Not down, right?
I'll wait right till 5:30 and then start.
Don't make that high, please.
Had a problem.
All right, just so everyone's aware, Chambers is unmuted and we are live on YouTube.
Shimo,
Okay.
straight through.
I have it in the living color. You get stuck with that ball. Always. Until it starts and you go. I'll be good. Swimming every day.
Get quite enough.
You're supposed to be doing.
Groups don't do the. No, they haven't. Eagle folks would believe that.
There, see, I waited. Trish. Hi, Trish.
Hi, Mark.
You're such a gentleman.
Hey,
I was trying to get him to start.
I'm ready.
ooh. Oh. My clock says 5:30. Okay, it's 5:30. I guess we'll get JPS started. Roll call. Everybody appears to be here. So with that, I'll call the meeting to order and minutes to approve.
Petrus.
Second.
I got a motion and a second. Any discussion? None. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Okay, we're gonna get right into it this evening. We've got a couple of presentations. We're gonna start right off with Lynn Marinelli. She's got a little short presentation on the EOC.
Sit right here instead of standing up. I guess I just wanted to, kind of get your feel for, we've been approached a couple of times over the years by the city of Auburn about locating the EOC in the new fire department building that they built in Auburn. And, a couple of years ago when Justin was still here, we had signed an agreement with them that really didn't say a heck of a lot, except that we'd be moving towards that. And we would be providing maybe some equipment for the EOC that they were building. And that was before they had built the building. So the building is built. As you know, we're talking about, maybe renovating our own building. And right now the EOC is in the basement, the large room, the meeting room that we have down there that's next to EMO. That would be the place right now where everybody would respond if there was an emergency. The city has talked to us. I'm kind of talking to you instead of having him come here and talk to the city manager, because it's not really, they're trying to talk us into it. It's more kind of to be like, what does the county want to do as far as moving forward? And it would not be moving any staff permanently to the building. EMO and the 911 backup center would still be located at the county. It would really just be a center for a report when the emergency happens. They're not talking about charging us any rent. That would not be the table. The building's already built. That's not something they're interested in. They would hope that we would maybe do the same type of agreement. That in the future, they have a lot of, smart boards and TVs, and they bought most of that already that they already put in the building. So I think they would be hoping that, for future years, we would be able to use the grants to try and get some other equipment to either upgrade things as it needs to be upgraded. I guess just before we got, too far into it, we wanted to see how the legislature felt about this. This is something that we should continue to discuss with Jeff Deiger and work out the details if we're going to be doing that, when it would be. Maybe it would not be for a year or two. I don't even know. I guess it's just kind of to see how people feel about that. If you would, want us to move forward with that type of a thing.
At one point, and this is where you just clarified, I remember the conversations a while ago. Oh, could this be a shared service project? Well, gee, maybe we don't know if we want to move there because we don't know what they're going to charge us. It's going to be so much more expensive. That conversation's totally off the table. This is just, if we set up an emergency operations center, instead of having it in the basement here, it would be in this new facility with their technology and potentially technology we would bring, the county might bring, and that would be the EOC if it was ever activated.
Right.
And there's no rent that's being paid, no commitment. that's the case?
I think so. I mean, obviously, we, haven't put things in writing. We're not at that stage to do it, but that is definitely what they're kind of saying, because it's already been built. They've already paid for it. They aren't looking for any additional funds.
Mr. Petrus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess, and this is probably putting the cart way before the horse, but I guess my concern before I would be in support of doing something like this is, so if we invest in that, is there potential legal issues around putting money into something that's not ours? Are we able to do that? No.
I would think so, because I mean, that would be in the grant. I don't think usually the most requirements about the location of the building. Equipment can be removed, it can be taken out of there. I mean, I would not think, I mean, we always get a prior approval in the grant applications and grant budgets for, to ask to be able to do that.
Thank you. Fred, if I could, Mr. Chair, could get counsel to,
Since it's another
Mr. Chair over here.
since it's another municipality, would not be an issue.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Lydia, and then the chair.
Thank you. So we're not talking about moving day-to-day operations. We're only talking about moving when we become activated.
Correct. And then we wouldn't have to plan that into the new building either, to continue to have a EOC in a new building, wherever it was, wherever we would locate.
Mr. Chairman.
I just want everybody to know that we did not reach out, Len and I did not reach out to the city. They reached out to us and offered us this deal, which is, I can't see it's a bad deal at all. It cost us nothing. It's a brand new building. It gives us an extra place to go in case of an emergency. And then Jeff and his whole staff were there and explained to us again, they're offering that room to us for nothing. So I don't see the downside of this at all.
Lydia?
Would it be fair to ask Mr. Courier his opinion?
You're more than welcome to. Dale, go ahead, if you have one.
Well, I will just share, because obviously I'm the lame duck here at this point, but very recently, the guidance from FEMA on EOC operations cautions or strongly cautions people who are putting EOCs together, which in New York State are typically based on a county level, from having their alternate in a building or a facility owned by somebody else, whether it's a department or another municipality. The rationale behind that being that if, and in this case, we had a large snowstorm, and the city's boxed in and we have problems elsewhere in the county, then who's got first dibs and priority of the EOC space, because it's in the city's firehouse, which will also be very active dealing with their own community issue and make the EOC activity significantly less effective from the county's perspective. So FEMA's guidance is try to avoid that type of a relationship. And that's based on past practice that it hasn't worked real well.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I agree 100% with you, Dale, that's something that's got to be worked out. I mean, FEMA's now always right. This is our community.
That's very true. Yeah.
Know the city and they know us, so it isn't like New York. But I think that's something that be worked out through an agreement. But that's a good point. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anybody else have any questions for? Oh, Andy?
Jim's hands up.
I mean, it doesn't sound like a horrible idea because the city, the county, we're all one, so to speak. But we absolutely have to have all the details. I mean, to say something won't cost anything, everything costs something. So we need absolutely all the legal details, money details, like he just said, government details. I mean, it's not a horrible idea because, like I said, the city is for one county, but just say, well, yeah, let's do it. It'll be free and this will be fine. No, I'm, I want everything in black and white in front of me before I make a decision on something like that, because I can't stand when people say it doesn't cost anything. Everything costs something.
Mr. Basile on the phone.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So, one, I agree with Andy. I was always taught nothing's for free. Money comes from somewhere. But the other question is, and I think Dale's example was a good one, a major snowstorm. Is it first come, first served for this room? That could present some problems. So I'd like to know more about how that would work.
Any other comments? Oh, Trish, go ahead.
Just some questions in terms of, so would that, the city's firehouse then become our primary designated EOC? Would we have a backup EOC as well? And I know at one point, like I agree, we need a different location for our EOC. This is a flood area in our basement. That's something that can be corrected through our building renovations. I don't know. But that's a major issue for having this site be designated as an EOC. So I'm glad we're looking at other options, but what does it mean in terms of being a primary versus a backup? And to Lydia's question about operations, would operations, EMO operations stay here then, or what is that?
Yeah, I think, the EMO operations would stay located with the county departments. So if we're here, they'd be here. And the 911 backup center is what I was talking about that we have in the basement. That would not be going either. That would stay as the backup center. We don't have a backup EOC, I don't believe. No, we only have one. So I mean, that we still would just have one. I don't think there would be a secondary. Obviously, in the back of our heads, if you have to do something, because if your site ever couldn't be accessed, we probably should just always have a secondary site. Even if it's not an ideal site, as far as, structure and things like that, you would want to have somewhere else people can report to if that was not an option for current situation. It could happen. So, and I think we don't have a lot of answers to the questions. I think those are good points that you brought up to be talking about space and how could you share it? And that would be, I think, worked out in case that situation happened. And just see what they say. We don't have a lot of details, so I totally agree with you, Andy, to see more what it is. And I guess we just didn't want to get too far into it if there was no interest at all. So that's really all.
Sorry, Hans, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, if we have, emergency, we're obviously the second longest county in New York. If we have an emergency where one part of the county is cut off from another, and you're gonna probably an EOC is gonna pop up where it can pop up to make.
Yes, I mean, that's what you do too. We have the site EOC where they do that all the time, where you put up your situational site.
Well, if I may, the term emergency operations center is very much a misnomer. Goes back to the 60s in civil defense, as does the basement. But the EOC is not the center point, if you will, to direct field operations. The EOC is about gathering, sorting information, gathering of decision makers at all levels of the organization or the communities to decide what needs to be done, dealing with the outcome. Do we need shelters? Do we have transportation issues where we have to clear streets? What resources do we need to acquire? So the EOC actually becomes the logistics section for the operations that are being done in all the different towns, villages, et cetera. So it is not the center point for directing operations. It's resource allocation and fielding.
Mr. Petcher.
My concern is that we're going to have a change in management within a few months. And I don't think we should be rushing anything at this point. We should back off and see what the new management thinks and then proceed, rather than, unless is there a timeline? No?
No.
Okay, just an open offer. Okay,
I mean, I wouldn't mind, getting more information, like still during this time to see, how it's gonna look, and then the new person would have the more information than having to try and make them, they'll have be overwhelmed probably when they start anyhow, so we can at least give them some information on this. But no, there's no rush.
Mr. Peters.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to, I don't know if we need it as a formal suggestion, but I'd like to request that Lynn be able to at least pursue see, get some more information, like you said. I don't know if we need to, were you looking for like something formal out of this committee? Okay.
I don't think so. I mean, the minutes will probably reflect that we've discussed this and there's support for just more information.
Okay. Anybody else have? Yep.
Mr. Chair, sorry, I'm not on this committee, but I am happy that they're formally came forward and had some sort of a plan, right? To move forward. I'd be very interested in the details. It would be great if we could get into planning a new building without an EOC. I'm sure they have great space and access to all the things that we had here. Especially coming out of the experience that we've had with the EOCs and COVID. Terrible. So, because we tried to set up a hotline, we tried to, there's not proper cabling. I mean, right. So until there's a new building and until we're renovated, we're stuck with this EOC. And as we know, as Dale knows, so things can happen anytime. So
Right, and that's a good point, Aileen. I think that this could be a term of an agreement too, not a permanent thing. And, and if it's not working out, we can certainly always do something different. The county can change, but they're not building it for us. It's already there. So they're not gonna look for a permanent thing.
Right. So it'd be great if we knew that we could occupy a space where the phones work and there's IT, like in 6 months or something were to happen.
Okay, anyone else? All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lynn.
Okay, next up is another presentation by Mr. Paul Rigby. He is the Central New York Bureau Chief of State Patrol or Parole Office. Paul, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to present quickly to the Legislative Board. My name is Paul Rigby. I'm a Cayuga County resident, born and grown. Recognize a lot of faces here. For those that don't know what the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision is, it was the brainchild of Governor Cuomo about 9 years ago to merge the Department of Corrections and the former Division of Parole into one agency, which is now called the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision. The idea behind that is to streamline a person who's convicted of a felony from the date they walk into the prison system, as far as their treatment needs, making sure their substance abuse, mental health, sex offender treatments all being taken care of while they're incarcerated, and then have that same case plan follow them when they're released into the community. So the Department of Corrections still houses the inmates when they're convicted of felony, and the community supervision part, which I work for right now, we supervise people who are either on post-release supervision or on parole supervision. Currently, I'm the bureau chief for two bureaus, the Syracuse area office and Syracuse Belt area office. I supervise day-to-day operations of 7 different counties, Cayuga County being one, Seneca County, Cortland, Oswego, Onondaga, Jefferson, and St. Lawrence counties. The legislators asked me to come today, Chairman Gould, to talk to you about our spot here in Cayuga County, where my officers sit and they meet, the county residents who are on parole supervision. With COVID, as you guys can imagine, our day-to-day operations changed dramatically during the health crisis. As of June 1st of this year, we started seeing our parolees, who are now called releasees under the new law, in the community again. We stopped for a little bit seeing the community because we were on pause. As long as I've been in the department, which is now 25 years, we've always seen people in Cayuga County and the city of Auburn. That site has changed. We were in the Auburn Police Department, but that kind of outgrew its space. For probably about the last 5-6 years, we've been seeing parolees at the county courthouse in a small little office there a couple of days a week. Now, for those of you that don't realize, what a parole officer does, I currently have 4 parole officers assigned to Cayuga County, supervising approximately about 140 county residents who are on community supervision. So they take office reports in the community just to review their conditions with the parolee, make sure that they're followed by their conditions and followed by their treatment programming. The parole officers go out and they assist, local law enforcement. They assist Sheriff Shank quite regularly, Chief Slayton, the state police. So a lot of people see parole as just that, but we also wear another big hat where it comes to our social work aspect, because we have to do all the case planning when someone's being released. When they're all individualized per each person who's being released, we take a look at, do they got substance abuse history? Do they need to be referred to CHAD or to Syracuse Recovery Services in this county? Do they have mental health history? Do we refer them to Cayuga County Mental Health or Cayuga Counseling Services? Same thing for domestic violence, those 2 programs. Are they a sex offender? Are we referring them to sex offender treatment, here in the community, which we partner with the Department of Probation here. We're seeing our same clients at the same time with the same provider to minimize costs and office space. So as I was saying, as of June 1st, we started opening up operations again. So I have right now approximately 17 satellite office spots where we see people in the community. Because our main office is inside Onondaga County, where all of my Onondaga County releases go to. My sub office in Jefferson County, they go there. But it wouldn't be fair for the other releases in different counties, the burden to travel that far to go to different counties. So we'd like to see them in the community. So a typical officer report can be as simple as just some talking going on, ask them how's treatment going, how's the house going, how's your family life going on. They're constantly referring people for employment services, where it's Kelly Services, the CAT program here that works for both Cayuga and Seneca County. If they're homeless right now, they're working with the Chapel House. They're working with transitional services, trying to get that person away from being in the shelter system or a DSS placement into their own independent lifestyle. We recently just started our drug testing again, which is now oral swab testing. They did that primarily because we see a lot more different genders, and we used to do a lot of urine testing, which was problematic because we had to have the same gender going in the bathroom. So we switched over as an agency to oral testing. So the legends asked me to come in front of you guys right now to see if you guys have any questions concerning our use of that space, any issues you guys have about us reutilizing that space. I can tell you it's paramount for us to be in the community, seeing our people in the community. So I want my officers here where they're working, where they're living. Right now I got about 26, 27 officers that live in this community, whether a parole officer, senior parole officer, a bureau chief, all live in Cayuga County. Majority of those guys work for me at the Syracuse office, 2 work out of Rochester, trying to work their way back. And you really want them out here because when we were stuck on COVID, we had to do office reports via the telephone. And you don't get the same contact. You don't build the same trust, with the releasee. You can't look at someone and say, man, something's not right. What's going on? You're losing a lot of weight, or you seem like you're not taking your medications. You don't get that firsthand, knowledge of dealing with your people. And then the nice thing about being out here right now is that then you're out here to respond immediately. A lot of times we'll get phone calls in. And I was just in my Watertown office the other day, and it's very small, only 8 officers, and a couple of guys on vacation. Quick call came on, probably wasn't a family emergency. I had to run out with the officers, which I don't do in the field too much, deal with a family emergency, talk to the mom, get the guy over to CPEP, for a forensic investigation. If we're an hour or 2 away, we're delaying that process. And then it relies on now the local municipalities, whether it's the sheriff's department, the police department, to go out there and try to deal with someone and deal with the family members in which they have no prior knowledge of. My officers build a strong rapport with the families. So a lot of times we can de-escalate something just by going there because of the rapport in which we have. So we have been utilizing that space, I want to say, for about 4 or 5 years. We're just asking to reutilize that space again. They take office reports on Mondays and Wednesdays only there. The rest of the time, it might be to just pop in real quick to file something. The nice thing about that space, it's right next to probation, where a lot of my officers work hand in hand with probation officers. They team up and they go do home visits together. If they're short on partners, they utilize each other as a resource. So we're just asking, for your guys' support for our continued use of that space. And I'm here to answer any questions. I did this last week at Cortland County, and I did a presentation at St. Lawrence County. So I'm like the department's bobblehead to answer any questions for you guys, give you guys information you guys have. you know. So open the floor for any questions.
Anybody have anything for Mr. Rigby, please?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, sir.
Yeah. Paul, it's good to see you again.
You too,
We've
sir.
known each other for a long time,
Yes, sir.
and congratulations on the bureau chief.
Thank you.
That's well deserved. You've had on office in the county for a long, long time, and Auburn PD, as you said, for many, many years. And it always worked out. As far as I know, there was never any problem with any civilians or anything else coming by the office or dealing with the inmates or the parolees. So I certainly am in favor of letting you use that office again. Absolutely, 100%.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Daly.
I guess my confusion, the only real discussion we've had about this was when you said that you were not utilizing the space for a period of time. And we all hear about the probation woes and how they don't have enough space. And what about the space? And is there agreement there, or is it just, so, I mean, I've never had any objections about parole having a site and using the space. But I mean, it sounds like you're utilizing it 2 days a week. That was generally what you would utilize it, but you had a pause from using it. You don't have any real agreement with the county. I mean, there's no contract or, right? I mean.
No, because how it works right now is that New York State Office of General Services works as all state agency, like landlord, that sets up all the agreements. So I can tell you out of my like 17 offsite locations, none of those locations want to go into official contract. Because we had this discussion, Chairman Gould and the county attorney, it's like a 400-page contract. It puts you in a tenant, owner leasing type of thing. They can give you a little bit of money for utilizing those spaces. A lot of times the restrictions in which the Office of General Services put upon, the person who's allowing us to utilize that space, they'd rather just not, it's not worth their headache. They always tell me. Like we take office reports also in other probation departments. We've done it before in treatment services agencies in the back room. We're doing it down in Cortland right now in the church that has a huge food pantry and a big office space back there, because we really want to be centrally located for our to see our people. Downtown's perfect for them because we got DSS down here, the treatment providers are down here. There's public transportation to get down here. They shop down here. They need emergency services or medical services all downtown. So if for some reason we lost this space, and let's just say had to go to the state police, now I got to worry about all the people in the wintertime. How are they going to get up to the state police barracks? Is there public transportation getting there? And then, if I said worst case scenario, you guys got to start reporting on Onondaga County. Well, then that's put, an awful burden on a lot of the family members to transport them there, or they got to take a taxi or Uber. I remember when I was down in Binghamton, we had to shut down one site because of a big COVID outbreak when it first started. I had a parolee riding a bike 20 miles just trying to make it to his office report. And I'm like, whoa, time out. I go, you don't need to do that. I go, we'll meet you halfway. So we really want to be in the community in which we service and we serve. So being down here is like a perfect fit. And it's nice because it's own separate entrance right there. My office also has, they have handheld metal detectors, so they can line people in, make sure they're safe as they're coming in, make sure they're safe as they're coming out. So it really is an ideal location.
Andy?
I mean, if we're not using it and it works for you, why do we have any issues? I mean, it obviously works for you well, from the sounds of it.
Yes, it does, sir.
Heidi, go ahead.
I wondered if Jay could speak to the usage issue and how, if you feel like the space could be used by your department, if we need to put that on the table.
Hello, Chief. Jay DeWispler. I'm Director of the Probation Department.
All right, sir.
We have a good relationship with the parole officers. Chief's absolutely right about that. We've continued to work to improve it, and there's some places we could still have a little more comedy, but for the most part, yeah, it's a really, really good working relationship. We enjoy having the parole staff there. It gives us a good chance to coordinate and cooperate. We have shared cases in certain circumstances, so it's a really good relationship. I've seen it in other places be far worse. The fact of the matter is, as you all know, is probation is out of space. We're being asked to take over the ignition interlock device monitor from the Stop DWI program. We have no place to put that person. So there is a conflict here. And, can I say that, that we should put parole out to accommodate that? I mean, that is more of this body's decision to make. But it is the fact of the matter that we are simply out of space. During the time when it wasn't clear what parole was going to do, there was a conversation about allowing probation to take that space over. It is being used. I can't argue with the use of it. But at some point, we are going to have to address the basic fact that we're supposed to be taking on another employee. We haven't resolved where that person's going to go yet. And for any future needs of the department, we simply have no further way we can expand where we currently are located. So, from my perspective, I'm happy to work with parole. I'm glad they're there. It's great for the two agencies to have that relationship. But as an advocate for the probation department, these are the basic facts of managing my department.
Chris?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to see if I can thread this needle. I concur with the director's need for space. It has been a need for quite some time, and I do believe it needs to be addressed. I would suggest making it perfectly clear that I'm not talking about the New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision in any way, that we address our building plan like through Barton LaJudas and all that, and see on a global scale how we can best accommodate all departments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I was just, of course, I think it's totally fine from my perspective where you're located. And I understand the crunch that's always been a problem for Jay. I just didn't know if anyone knew the status of the records building, and are we clearing out a lot of that space that is technically an entire building that we own that could be opened up eventually for some use.
Andy?
You mean I'm gonna break the needle? When are we gonna actually address the real problems in a shrinking state and shrinking county where we all of a sudden keep continuing to need more space? So we need to figure out how to not have to have more space, because those people shouldn't be pushed into those situations where we need that space. Oh, I mean, it blows my mind that every census we lose more and more people, but yet we seem to have more and more people who get thrown into different kind of services. I know this isn't technically a service, but they're thrown into a situation where it doesn't make sense. I mean, but that's a whole nother problem that nobody ever wants to address. What's the cause? Government goes up, population goes down, because population gets forced into doing things they shouldn't be doing. Does it make sense?
Trish, you have something?
Yes. Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. I was also kind of thinking about probation too and their space needs. I had a chance to go visit and see, where the space that they're squeezed into. And I think it is a real consideration that we have to kind of put forward first and foremost, because they're county department, but I also think that co-location of services just as important, especially with community partners that are kind of synergistic. So I think this is a perfect time to be having this discussion, because we are looking at our building space needs and where departments should go or can go. And we're looking at the hybrid options as well. I believe Dave is working with Shireen on that. So I was just curious from Jay, asking Jay in terms of, how often are your staff actually in the office versus out in the field?
Well, they start, I would say right now, all of our clerical staff are always in the office. That's 4 of our 16 personnel. The rest of and the 3 administrative staff, myself and the 2 supervisors, we are in the office 95% of the time, unless we're needed to go back up another officer, which happens occasionally. The field supervision officers are probably 70 to 80% in the office, 20 to 30%. We're trying to change that up post-COVID. We're working on a different contact model to get the officers out in the community more. But the fact is that with the requirements that we're now working with as far as DCJS programming and the need to maintain computer records and generate reports and make sure all of our contact and information is up to date. There's a lot of computer time that the officers are now obligated to do. So if we're looking towards like a desk sharing type of model, maybe we could make something like that work. But we would have to really, really consider, how to balance that time out.
Mr. Chairman.
Just a suggestion, Mr. Chair. Why don't we, this could go on forever. Why don't Jay and I and Paul get together with with Gary Duckett and see if we can come up with space for Jay and for Paul. Is that okay with the committee?
Sounds like a very good plan, sir.
So hopefully maybe Gary's got some space that is not being used. I do not know that, but if he does, then we can make everybody happy.
Paul, would you be willing to meet with the chairman and Jay? Of course. Absolutely. All right. Any other questions for Paul? Paul, thank you very much for coming in, taking your time. It's good seeing you again, buddy.
Thank you. I see you
Thanks,
guys.
Paul.
Take care.
See you later.
Okay, so let's get right into the business. And we have no appointments. So let's move right on into committees. Ms. Spengler, 911.
Excuse me, good evening. You should have my report. A few things I would like to highlight on that and elaborate on. Just to give an update with regards to new hires. We're struggling. It's not an easy process and things have definitely changed. We right now have 4 going through the background process. Hopefully they'll all be successful. Our training has been pushed out to September 6th, pending that they all get through that background process. With that said, once we're done with this round of hiring, we'll have 3 people left on our list. Never have I experienced that in the 16 years I've been doing this job. That goes to show the interest level in the position today. It's tough. So one of the things I really want us to look at, and I know nobody wants to talk about money, but we really need to look at the dispatch salaries. It's not in line with what that job expectation is anymore. They're expected to do so much more. The responders have a lot more needs of them. The liability has increased. Things like, sitting in a dispatch seat and having an officer call out with, to a gunpoint. The anxiety and the stress that come with that. Recently, I talked about having an employee who received a lifesaver award for helping a patient who was choking. So you think about the adrenaline rush during that. And then, as soon as they hang up the phone, that adrenaline crashes. And the wondering of, did they make it? Recently we had an employee a female who walked out in the garage and found her husband hanging. She's hysterical. The dispatcher's trying to calm her, trying to help her get him to a position where you can cut him down. Or, the woman got to a point where she was literally standing underneath him, holding him up, and he had locked all the doors around. So she's trying to get the responders to break a window. The stress that comes with this job is unimaginable, to be very honest with you. It's very, very difficult. And at any given time, these calls happen. And they're expected to hang up that phone and move on to the next. Another recent one was the big structure fire in the city. 2 of the victims that were involved called into dispatch screaming because they were stuck in the building. You're trying to calm them and help them get out and find an entryway and let responders know where they are. It's stressful. It's scary. Those are the things that we really need to think about when we're looking at the salaries that we're paying these people to do these jobs. They start out at around 50,000 and they cap out at 56,000. And when you think about what's expected, it's not fair. And I hate to have to say that, but when I look at what I expect of them and what our responders expect of them, it's a lot. It really is a lot. And it's becoming more and more. One of the new policies I'm working on is for dealing with unruly callers because they've become so common to dispatch, dealing with people swearing at them and using words that I hope my children never use. having to deal with somebody screaming at you, calling in 10 times during your shift. It wears on you and it's hard to deal with. And we have a no hang up policy. You can't hang up on callers. You have to deal with it. So we're trying to work through a policy where, how do we do this tactfully? How do we say, we have to take other calls. We need to disconnect without, hanging up on them. The goal obviously be to make sure that there is no clear emergency or there is no situation that warrants them to stay on the phone, because in those situations, obviously, they need to do that. But I also don't expect somebody to take a lot of that abuse, because that's really what it's becoming, is abuse. Any questions on that before I move on?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Are you, I guess I just need to clarify, are you talking about people who are calling for an actual emergency, or are these people that are just being idiots and calling 911 just to yell at somebody?
Well, it's both. So you have people who, remember, we take the administrative calls for Auburn Police. So somebody has a neighbor who's playing music too loud and it's ticking them off. So they'll call the Auburn Police line. Well, all of those calls come into dispatch. Or, my boyfriend's not doing what I want him to do. I want him arrested. Or my neighbor's dog is barking and they won't stop. And now my neighbor's screaming at me. Any of those kind of complaints or things, even just somebody gets in a motor vehicle accident and there's no injury, so they just call a non-emergency line, and the two drivers are arguing, anything like that. I can't even begin to explain some of the calls that they get, that people are just beyond unruly.
Is there any legal ramification on that?
So if they continue to call, yes. So that's going to be part of our policy, is to dispatch law enforcement to handle it. Or things like, I'll give you an example today, just before I left. A guy called in and he's screaming at the dispatcher because last week he's complaining that an officer didn't handle a situation correctly. Okay, well, let me get somebody down at the police department to talk to you. I want to talk to him right now. Okay, sir, let me get somebody on the line. Let me make sure somebody's available. Listen, you CUNT, I want to talk to somebody now. Like, that's what our society has come to. Like, they shouldn't have to deal with that. There's zero reason that somebody should have to deal with that. But unfortunately, they're trying to get somebody on the phone to help, and this person doesn't want to work with them and have a little bit of patience. So, yeah, I mean, it's a lot. It's our things are getting out of control.
Anybody else have anything for Denise?
I'm not done.
Mr. Chair.
Denise, have you ever, and I'm sure you have, checked with the neighboring counties and see what's comparable to ours?
So that's a tough thing, because we have, but there are so many different pay scales in the way that they pay. So for example, I was talking to the director from Jefferson today. Our starting pay is higher, but they get 6% added to their salary if they work 3 to 11 or 11 to 7. And they get the double time for holidays. So they're all done differently. So it's hard to say, like, this county makes more and this county pays this way. We don't have a differential for nights or weekends or holidays. We have a straight differential 24/7. So there's no apples to apples to try to compare those salaries.
Thank you.
This all has to be part of the collective bargaining negotiations. I mean, these are proposals that you bring forward when they're looking at.
It is. My goal is for the ledge to support it, because we really need, when they come, and the tough part, Elaine, is they're part of CSEA.
Right, but I mean, the proposals have to come as management proposals that get negotiated, I guess. I mean.
Yes, but my goal is to potentially do an MOU, because I don't know that. So you say CSEA gives a 3% raise. Well, that's everybody across the board.
But isn't that contract up this year?
Yes, it is.
Right. So you, before the contract negotiations, do an MOU before the end of the year?
So what I would recommend, and that's why I just want to start having this conversation now, is I would like to see an upgrade in their salaries. And I don't know that that's going to happen the way we would want it to through contract negotiations. And maybe it will. I'm not involved in those really, so I don't have a lot of conversation with that group, because I'm not on that management team.
You got a couple of.
Yeah, just a couple other things. The ARPA funds were used to pay for new batteries in the UPS units at all of the tower sites. That project has just come to completion. So I just want everybody, I want to thank, the group for approving that project and letting you know that that was completed. I sent an email out, actually, I think Chairman Gould sent it. We finally have started to see some grant money coming forth. We were awarded $220,000 in our PSAP grant for this year. That will be used for new dispatch chairs, and then it will be used to offset salaries in the center. Excuse me. I will be bringing a resolution next month to accept that grant and sign any contracts associated. The SEEK grant was 1.4 million, and that's kind of a 2-year grant. So that will be used mainly for maintenance. Between 2023 and 2024 maintenance, that's almost 900,000. And then the master site maintenance, you have another 100,000 between the 2 years combined. We need to replace our recorder at our primary center. So I'm working on that project as well as our backup site. And it'll do some other small upgrades with our microwave. We need to do just microwave upgrades. But the majority of that will be used to offset operational expenses with regards to maintenance of the system. The last thing is I did kind of give a breakdown of where we are with unanticipated costs associated with the sites, just to give you guys an idea of where we are. And I provided a kind of a status report regarding the issues that we've been working through on the southern end. There's some gaps in coverage there that were, they were known when we built the system out. But I think the frustrations of the inability to communicate in some of those areas has definitely continued to escalate. The Lake Como area probably being one of the most predominant troublesome areas. So we've been working through those. I did give them a few new portables to test in that area. We have looked at new tower sites, but for many of you who were here, the cost of a tower site. I'm waiting to get costs from Motorola for the equipment part of it. But then, we also have things like land acquisition. We have shelters, generators, tower construction. So the initial proposal for Motorola showed a need for a minimum of 3 sites to cover some of these dead spots. So, 3 sites, you're looking probably $7 million when all is said and done. And I'm guessing and not thinking about the fact that things have all increased in costs. So, to fix these problems is not going to be inexpensive, but it's something that is on the radar and that we're trying to work through and get costs. And once we have final numbers, I'll bring them all to committee. I don't think I have anything else.
Chair.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just on the site projects.
Yep.
Does Don help you? Did they go up for bid or is this?
We haven't done any of that yet. No. So I want to get the numbers from Motorola first, because those are generally the big numbers.
Okay.
That's all the equipment for the sites. Then we would have to go out to bid for towers and for the shelters, generators, all of that.
Is there anything locally in our county that any organization or company that can do any of this? Got to be from out of county, because I'd love everything to stay in our.
Yeah, and I am the same way local. We used to use Finger Lakes for a ton of work. Unfortunately, they just can't provide it anymore. So the answer to answer that is probably no. Northeast Towers is probably the closest, and that's Onondaga County.
All right. Thank you.
Anyone else? I'd just like to add that, one, I've been working with Denise on the issues with the towers and the communication stuff. I'm either on the phone, stopping by the office, whatever, constantly, and it's a serious concern, and we are working on it, and doing our best. And the other thing I would like to just add, if anybody has never been out to the 911 center and just spent an hour sitting there and seeing what the dispatchers go through and stuff. I know Denise has made it available to have, legislators come by and spend some time out there. If you've never done it, I highly recommend it. And you will understand what they go through, and it's eye-opening. And I've been around the fire service for 30+ years. I've been in the center multiple times. And I can tell you the last time I was in there about a month ago, the pace has increased dramatically. And those people, they work very hard at what they do, and they are professionals. Okay, other than that, thanks Denise for your report.
Can I have one more thing? I just wanted to highlight the thank you to IT that I put on here. We had a major upgrade last month, and I cannot emphasize the importance of our Cayuga County IT and the improvements I've seen in our department. Huge project, and the success of it was, a lot of it was reliant on the IT department. Jeremy Bavone specifically really was fantastic. Followed through, was present, a really excellent job. So kudos to Tom and the IT department for.
I'm actually home tonight. I'm listening to a meeting. I'm not in this one. I gotta wait for the next one, but.
Kevin Schwab.
I'm just walking to the gym.
Kevin Schwab. That's what lighten up.
And Amanda.
Really, they were very consistent with everything they did and stayed on top of problems, and
Good.
I was thankful.
Nice. Thanks, Denise. Next up on the list looks like Mr. Hotchkiss with assigned counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You all received my report for July. If there's any questions or concerns. If not, I have two resolutions.
Yes, sir. Go ahead and do them right now, sir.
First resolution is my only employee, Diane Paxia, has worked for this county for 40+ years and has decided that at the end of the month that she would like to retire from county service. I've kind of like twisted her arm to stay on part-time until we get the supervising attorney's position filled, and also for those of you, she actually was a senior typist for the Youth Bureau and also deputy administrator for the assigned counsel program. So she was actually 1.5 employees. And so we've been using her full-time, and now we're going to use her part-time if this is approved. And I really think the title itself needs to be changed. But I'd like to work on that with the supervising attorney. It really needs to be an administrative assistant, not necessarily a senior typist. I work with civil service to reclassify it. But in the meantime, I would like consideration to have her continue as the deputy administrator into the resolution is for a year, but in talking with the county attorney's office, they really think the resolution should run until my appointment ends in January. My appointment ends January 21st. So
Of 23.
yeah, of 23. So it would be for the next September, October, November, December, January.
So, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Do we need to move this and then amend it? So I'll move JP 1.
Yeah, I'll second for. Yeah, same.
Okay, we have a motion and a second and we'll go into discussion.
So where do we, I mean, what financially wise, how does this all work out?
It's all paid for. It's all in the budget. Indigent Legal Services is paying the entire salary of deputy as well as my salary.
So it's just changing.
I
guess what's the changing of the name do? I guess that's.
Well, she's going off the books so she can collect her retirement. We're bringing her on part-time and extending it until January 25th. And she's already the deputy administrator. So we're really reappointing her because she's retiring at the end. She's got to be off the books for 24 hours.
So the title doesn't really mean anything. You just want the title to say that.
Correct.
That's what I'm trying to get.
Right. Right.
That's two separate things though, right? So that's not germane to this
Correct.
resolution.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
I will bring a resolution probably later in the year for the administrative assistant or whatever we call it.
So in the interest of, if I could, can I make a motion to amend the resolution to read what's the
September 1st of 22 to January something of 23.
25th.
January 25th, is that?
23.
So
Yes, we can do that.
so I'll make that motion.
All right, I have a motion to amend the current or the JP one to read the dates specified. So I have a motion. I need a second.
I'll second that.
And I have the second. Any discussion on the motion to amend? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Could I ask one question? I support the amendment. I was just curious, the senior attorney is never in your mind going to be the deputy administrator? You're always going to need some form of clerical support?
Correct.
Okay, so it's not time limited, so until the attorney comes and they'll assume that responsibility. Some other title that you're going to work on will be brought forward to continue to provide part-time support or?
I'm not sure. It depends on how much the supervising attorney will do in terms of
Right.
the clerical stuff.
And how much the grant will, I mean, at this point, you must have taken her two salaries together and approximated this
Correct.
hourly rate. Is that how you got it?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so
We already passed it.
yeah, we haven't passed it and there is no opposed. Any opposed to the amendment? Okay, then it's carried. Now we need to go back and
I'll make a motion for JP one as amended.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Carried. Okay, JP two.
Thank you, Chairman. JB2 is, I don't know if everybody's familiar with Westlaw. It's a online legal research. You go there to look up cases, you go there for legal research, you go there for appellate work, criminal work. It's another tool to make attorneys even better at what they do. County Attorney's Office has it. District Attorney's Office has it. Our ILS grant, which we applied for and received, we put money in there for Westlaw to get licenses for those that choose to be on the assigned counsel panel. It's another incentive to be on the assigned counsel panel. This agreement in the contracts have been reviewed by the County Attorney's Office. This agreement calls for 30 licenses. We have like 30, approximately 30 on our assigned counsel panel. So every attorney can now have access to Westlaw. And the price for those 30 license agreements are spelled out in the resolution. It's a 3-year contract. Again, Indigent Legal Services is picking up the tab for all 3 years.
Oh, I need you make the motion. Okay, I have a motion. I need a second.
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye. I'm not on the committee.
Of course.
Why did we want to make people who are defending people more efficient getting them out? Well, that's my question, I guess. It's a rhetorical question.
Right.
Carried.
Yeah.
Moving on. Any other questions for Mr. Hoskins today?
That goes towards my statement earlier.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up is Dr. Adam Duckett.
I don't see
I
him.
don't see him on the computer. No updates. Moving on. Ms. Antonacci, District Attorney.
Good evening, everyone. I don't have any updates, but I do have two resolutions on. JP 3, I am looking for approval for a salary adjustment for one of my assistant district attorney positions. I have an individual who has 12 years experience. He is currently getting paid $3,000 less than my attorneys who have 2 years of experience. So in the interest of fairness, I want to get him, I'm not asking for much, but I want to get him his salary a little bit more than what those newer attorneys are making. Unfortunately, he's at the assistant DA level, so that will be the cap as high as he can possibly go with the compensation plan, with the range that we're given. But I would like to get him above those two new attorneys. In my opinion, it's common sense. He asked me why he gets paid less than the two brand new attorneys, and I can't give him a rational, logical explanation. He's a great employee. I'd hate to lose him. And so we're looking to increase his salary from $73,286 to $76,500, which would get him about $500 over those two brand new attorneys.
I'll move it for discussion.
Second, Peaches.
All right, I have a motion and a second moved for discussion. Go right ahead, Andy.
Okay, so how many years have we been going through this compensation thing? How did,
I
fell through the cracks here? I mean,
to your, if I can say something to your point, Andy, this is kind of perplexing me too, because I was on the hiring policy for non-bargaining employees, and it really wasn't to retain highly qualified employees. It was to set hire bands, minimum and maximum hire bands, so that we could hopefully, it was a lot of fun committee, hopefully get people hired by the county, be able to look at their range of experience and put them in a band that we approve. If this individual, in my mind, this is why I'm struggling with this, was here prior to this hiring ban going into effect, that any individual that was below the minimum was up to the minimum. Any individual that had up to 5 years was at the midpoint range. Any individual with over 10 years should have been at the high end of the hiring band. I don't recall you coming and asking to exceed those higher bands. So why would this individual with 12 years not have been moved up to the high end of the hiring band and had some form of adjustment? I don't know if it's the aid to prosecution money that he's not getting, but it's not making sense to me, because we try to make this logical and fair for the current employees. If they were below the minimum or had 10 years, they got to the high end of the higher band. And then we took some longevity steps to compensate people who, so I don't know how this could have, how you brought brand new people on, didn't exceed the high end of the hiring band, and they're making $3,000 more.
So, yeah, so the new hires, it's competitive to get new ADAs right now. I mean, there's a crisis across New York State with prosecutors. So I went to HR and I said, I have two people who are making $78,000. If they come in at 76,000, which is within that hiring band, can I have approval? And I received approval, so I didn't have to go through the legislature.
See, and I always thought that anyone that was hired above the higher band required legislative approval. That's why it's shocking to me that you never exceeded it, or HR took the liberty of exceeding the higher band and we weren't aware of it, because this was in hopes of testing these higher bands. Are they high enough? I mean, I don't, that was my understanding. I didn't know anyone had exceeded the higher band. And if they did, we should have been brought up and been advised of that.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, because obviously I'm newer at this position, but you're saying that there are years within the higher bands that they're not.
When we put the higher bands in force, we basically said, because long-term employees were like, oh, you're going to hire people and they're going to make more money than me. If you were below the minimum, you at least the minimum. If you had 5 years of experience, you went to the midpoint. If you had 10 years, you were hired at the high end of the higher band. And then we passed some longevity awards to people for 10 years of service, 5, 10, 20. So that's why I'm having a hard time understanding how this could be. Because the individual should have been brought up to the high end of the band. And if you have exceeded the bands in your most recent hires, I'm not aware because I thought those exceptions need to come through the legislature.
Was it exceeded or is it?
No, they were within the range.
Well, then,
Yeah.
I'm still then confused why this individual wouldn't have been brought up to the high end of the range.
Right, yeah, I don't know, it just came to my attention that he was being paid less, so I wanted to correct it and bring him to the high end and get approval, obviously, to get him to that high end of the range, because it is an adjustment as opposed to a new hire coming on.
I mean, if I would like HR before I could support this, we can't discuss the individual, but HR should have made the adjustments if that's my understanding, so.
If I may, Elaine, I think were you in?
Part of that.
Oh, part of, yes.
Yes, okay. Didn't we not say and I'm only going back on my memory, which isn't very good. Didn't we say that there was going to be a few individuals that somehow missed? For some reason, I thought I recalled that
I
conversation.
think in terms of the bands, because some people were like extremely out of bounds.
Right.
And we got them pushed up. And some people really stand to gain during this period in order to make them.
Like the highway superintendent, for example.
Yes.
Got a huge increase.
To make that job competitive for the marketplace. But, so yeah, some people made a dramatic increase.
But did we miss? I thought there was some discussion about we might have missed a few, that like a small number, like.
I don't know.
But maybe it could be.
I think that we.
Elected appointments, maybe.
Right, there was maybe a couple outliers, but I think the idea was setting the structure so we don't have outliers.
Okay. Lydia, you had your hand up and then Chris.
Sorry, for what it's worth, he seems to be the only one in my office that falls into that category.
Yeah, to me, HR should have looked at, yeah.
So based on what I'm hearing, am I hearing that possibly the DA does not have to come to us and ask for this because of the band being in existence?
I would like to see how HR, if this individual had 10 years of experience and was there not an adjustment made? Was it somehow missed before I would support this resolution? But I mean, that's just.
So what I'm asking is why, if this happened, and you said it happened, since this happened, why does DA Antonacci have to ask for this when it sounds like she's already within her ability to get this without coming to us and asking?
I don't understand this at all. That's what I'm saying. I don't really understand this at all.
Well, if I may, Fred, go right ahead.
Does it make sense to reach out to HR to get these questions answered and have answers available next week at Ways and Means?
I believe that would be appropriate.
And we certainly can't talk about individual specific unless we go into executive session. It's just.
We can get an idea of what happened to this position.
Yes.
We shouldn't go into executive session until we have those.
Right, exactly.
So.
Chris, did you?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't want to come off as dismissive of the point you're making. Understood. But I just have to say, does anyone think it's appropriate for a Juris Doctor with over 10 years of experience to be making $75,000 a year? Does that seem like a reasonable salary? I understand the point that you're making with regard. I'm simply just saying it's logical to conclude. I think it's within reason to think that it's practice.
I don't agree.
If I
got him and then I'll get you.
So just for clarification, I don't know if you know the answer, Brittany or Fred, we can get it from HR. Those that are making $3,000 more than this person or whatever, they're within the range that we didn't exceed.
Correct. So the range is, and I don't know the exact numbers, but the range is around for a standard ADA position, regardless of years of experience, just the type of position is between 67,000 and 76,000. That's the range, which is why I was able to go to HR and try to get competitive salaries, because quite frankly, if I wasn't within that range and I couldn't meet the higher end of it for my 2 new hires, they would not have come here. But so it just, yeah.
Right, but if you stayed within the range.
Exactly.
HR meets with the department head, and as long as they stay in the range, then we don't know anything different.
So we just gotta
So
figure
find
out
out what happened with this.
what went wrong with this one person.
Right, and this is the only attorney that I can see, because he doesn't get any aid to prosecution. Only certain positions have aid to prosecution funding. So his position does not have.
But is
corresponding
that
aid.
why his salary is lower? Because you give it aid to prosecution to these other attorneys and not this one?
No, the base salary for the other hires was 76.
I just had a quick comment with Mr. Petrus's statement. That is something you voted on as a legislature. It wasn't a hidden committee. It wasn't.
I just want to make, no.
And we poured over it for a long time, and then we've all voted for it. So I
had extra dyed hair.
And I'll go for more.
Exactly. That was the last.
I just don't think they're competitive salaries. And I've said that about like law enforcement and.
My fear moving forward and listening to the DA and Denise Spingler, here, we're going to be at this point very soon, where we're looking again across the board in order to keep people and attract people to this county. We're going to have to.
Agreed.
It's terrible.
If I may, and I'm gonna refer to the county attorney, can we, I want to do this correctly. I guess if we're at discussion, we've had the discussion, I would have to ask if there's anybody in favor of the motion. All in favor, signify with an aye.
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 Knew that was
Which motion is that?
I don't know what you.
For JP 3,
Oh, just to approve it?
yeah.
Well, what's the point of talking to HR? I mean,
Well-
I'm not saying I'm against it, but
I'd like to know the information.
I'd like to amend it to, go ahead and yell at me, Fred, however you want to do this. Push it to Ways and Means for further information.
Refer it to it.
Refer it. Talk to me.
Again, I'm gonna refer to the legal aspect of getting this done
Funny you
correctly.
should say.
We can do that, can't we?
We can refer it to Ways and Means. I see Mr. Petrus here. Refer it to Ways and Means, see if we can get Ways and Means to consider it if we have when we have the information.
Yeah.
And then see what happens at Ways and Means.
And I make the motion to amend it to push to, or whatever. Refer it to Ways and Means. You know what I said.
All right, I have a motion to refer JP 3 to Ways and Means pending information from HR. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Well,
Can you discuss or no? Can I discuss? Not on this committee.
yeah.
Is refer in our rules of order
Is referral and
to
your,
refer to another committee.
it's permitted, the rules of order just talk about precedent. It's not listed as a precedent, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Yes, I had an extensive conversation about this today. Just
It's a hot
wanted,
topic.
just wanted to get your perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll give you another answer tomorrow.
That's why we thank you for his perspective.
Just to be clear, all in favor of,
Getting additional information and referring it to Ways.
yes, ma'am.
Nicely done.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Carried.
Just correct.
Okay, and I believe you have JP 4 also.
I do. JP4, I am currently out of office space. So I actually took one of the back offices in order to make the former DA's office. My goal is to split, it's huge, to split that into 2 offices. I have a deputy chief starting at the beginning of October, and I don't have an office to put her in currently. And our hallways are very narrow and they won't hold the desk. So I need a room to put her in. The most feasible thing we could think of, I've been working with buildings and grounds since the beginning of July. I got an estimate from Gary Duckett to build a wall and divide the former huge office into two so that we can accommodate our new hire and put her in half of that. And then the other half will be used for our internship program. We always have about 4 interns every semester, every summer. And then we have a crimes against revenue investigator who is hourly. So he's in maybe a day or 2 a week. He will be in that other room as well, but I need the space. So I did get the estimate from Buildings and Grounds. We are looking to, my understanding is that they're going to put this out for bids and then hopefully start soon because things always take longer than anticipated.
Okay, I need a
Move
motion.
it, Beatrice.
I have a motion. I need a second.
Second.
I have a motion, motion and a second. Any discussion?
I assume the budget director told you to get it, the 23,000 from the fund balance?
Yes.
Okay, even though, and I do recall, Brittany, you did report surprisingly good news that you are getting the discovery money. You did not budget for, it's not anticipated, so that will be additional revenue coming into your budget that you didn't have. So I would assume take it from the fund balance, and when you're over in revenue, because you didn't anticipate it, that will go back into the fund balance. So this is a one-time expense and.
Yes, yep, hopefully a one-time expense. And I mean, it's a good problem to have that we're getting a new hire. We need the extra office space, but I do need a place to put her, so I appreciate it.
If you had accepted the grant, it might have been there too, but you haven't even accepted it into your budget.
That,
Right,
yeah, we're
she's
doing-
probably just taking it in as revenue if I defer. Right, okay, all right.
Okay, any other discussion on JP4? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Anything else for the district attorney? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, Mr. Courier.
Good evening, everyone. I'm back here, so I don't have too many people in my back. I believe everybody got my report, so I'll ask, is there anything I can add or clarify? Hearing nothing. If I may, I'll take a moment. 22 months ago, I first came here to Cayuga County. First meeting I came to in this room, I had no intention of coming to because I was only going to be here for maybe 90 days. Legislator Pesher came by the office. He said, "Hey, you coming upstairs to the meeting?" And I said, "No, there's too many people. I'm avoiding people." No, you gotta come up. Gotta let people see what you look like. 4 days later, the health department called, said you need to go home for the next 9 days. You've been exposed.
Love it.
So hence that started what has now turned into a rather interesting 2-year ride. So thanks to many of you here who have had the opportunity to work with. It's been, like I say, very interesting, far different than I expected 90 days to be, but I'm very glad to have been here. So thank you all.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add, and I think I've said this before, Dale, thank you for your time here. I appreciate it, and I wish you all the best with an anticipated retirement.
Thank you.
Next up on the list is J.D. West Polaire, probation. Jay?
Good evening, everyone. Just this afternoon, I received good news from Division of Criminal Justice Services that I shared with the chairman of committee, chairman of legislature and budget director. Director Macaron from OPCA has approved our annual aid and plan application, which releases our 2023 block grant funding for probation services. I wish it were more than it is, but it's approximately 10% of the department's budget. It floats a little bit every year, but it's in about that window. So that will be coming as it's released quarterly through the state financial year. So that's good news. Did forward a report earlier if anyone has any questions about anything that I've put in there. Good news for the department at this point, our new account clerk typist started Monday, and we're busily training to get her up to speed. I'm waiting on information from Human Resources so we can fill the current probation officer vacancy. Just as a little bit of additional background, since March, at one point or another, the department has been down anywhere from 2 to 5 people, and that's out of a total general strength of 16. So it's been a very, very stressful summer, a very disrupted summer. I mean, as I did put in my report, one of our probation officers, one of our youngest officers, has had some pretty alarming health news, and I certainly can't go into detail here. We're hoping for the best. They've not been able to provide us all information yet, but it could be a significant health crisis. So potentially that is going to continue our being understaffed and disrupted for a while longer. If I get any significant update one way or the other, then perhaps an executive session might be in order next month. But we're hoping that the news is going to be better in the next couple of appointments that are scheduled. So we're close to full strength, but we keep seeming to get these little kicks back every once in a while. Beyond that, we've continued to reopen from COVID and are functioning as normal as we can, considering that we've been down so many people for such a period of time. And that's it.
Anybody have anything for Jay? Okay, thank you, and congratulations on that. I guess it was an award or passing the test or whatever you want to call it.
They call it an award, I think, just to make us feel good about getting less money.
All right.
When I started in this profession, the award was around 30%. Now we're about 11.
All right, sir. Thank you for your time. Next up would be the Sheriff, Brian.
Good evening. Submitted my report. I just have one other additional item that I wanted to update you on relative to the report, and certainly I'm happy to take some questions if you have any. In regards to our medication assisted treatment program that we have to implement before October 1st, I have been working with our mental health director, Lauren Walsh, relative to funding that the state provided to help us implement this program. There's $100,000 that was taken into the mental health budget to help with this. We've worked out some estimates as to what we can or what we're going to need as far as that money goes and how we can potentially split that up. Unfortunately, it is going to require adding a position in the jail. I'm going to try to do that in the most cost-effective way possible to try to utilize the funding that we'll have left. But looking at the number of people we'll likely have on medication, MOUD in the jail, looking at the cost of the medications being roughly in the area of $35,000, $40,000 a year. We're basing that on another jail that's similar in size to us that already has a program implemented. Knowing the funding that mental health will need to cover some of their time, I think there's going to be roughly in the area of $40,000 to $45,000 left for us to add a position at the jail. I'm not exactly sure how we're going to be able to manage this MAT program the best way as far as what type of individual we're going to want to bring in or need to bring in. But I don't know if that'll be an LPN, if it'll be some type of clerical staff to free up our RNs to do more nursing work than some of the clerical work they're doing. But we'll try to come back to you next month with the best way that we can do that, utilizing that funding. I think, unfortunately, I don't think $100,000 is going to be quite enough to meet all of our needs, the prescription costs, the additional staff member, and the time that mental health is going to have to put into this mandated program by the state, but we'll get it as close as possible. I know that funding is in the budget for next year, the state budget. I'm hopeful that continues to come, but like anything, I'm guessing at some point down the road, that's going to dry up with the state and we're going to be left with that. But it is right now it's a mandate that we have to meet, and we'll have to move forward with that. So I'll be bringing some type of resolution to you next month relative to that. The other update, everything's moving forward with the Moravia contract for the special patrol officer. It looks like that everything's going smoothly with that. So we are going to do an interview next week of somebody that I think will be a good fit for that position. Hopefully get that in place by the start of the school year. And I did have a very positive discussion with the Union Springs School District. It looks like they want to move forward with that. They're eager to do that. A very similar contract to the ones that we worked out with Moravia and Fort Myron. They are eager to move forward and help cover some of the administrative costs for the position that I came to you last month to create. So that's moving in a positive direction. But before I address my resolution, if there's any questions relative to my report or anything, I'd be happy to answer those.
Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, Brian. So, I mean, any prisoner we have that has any kind of health issues, it's all on the county to pay for like prescriptions, and if something was to happen to them and they had to go to the hospital or something, it's all comes from.
So we do have to pay for medical bills and prescriptions for the inmates that we house. If they're actually admitted to the hospital, then we can bill Medicaid. The hospital will bill Medicaid for those, but we do have to pay otherwise. So if it's just treatment that we're providing at the jail, they're prescribed meds, so we have to take them to a doctor. We have to pay for that. In fact, I don't know if you recall a few meetings ago, I think I gave you just a heads up that we had a patient in the jail earlier in the year that had cancer and some significant cancer treatments that the county was responsible for. He was sentenced to the jail. We were responsible to cover those. Our board-ins, we bill those costs. So the federal board-ins, we bill that cost, prescriptions and any medical care gets billed back to them, as well as any local board-ins. If we board for other sheriffs, we bill that back to those counties. But if there are inmates housed in our facility, we're responsible for those costs.
So I guess my question is, and it probably doesn't happen very often, but if you have one there that has insurance, does their insurance, it's still on us whether they have insurance or not?
When they're in our facility, it's our responsibility and we can't. There's been a push across the country by the National Association, Sheriff's Association that these costs be borne to Medicaid, but there hasn't been any positive movement with that. Municipalities are saddled with those costs themselves.
But they pay for hospitalization. I didn't even think they paid for hospitalization.
Yeah, we can.
Fairly new?
If they're admitted, that's something that we've done for years. So I know that's been a
psychiatric admission or a medical admission, those kind of things.
I know medical. I'm not sure about the psychiatric. I know medical.
But any care and drugs you give them while they're there, yes, there's no Medicaid eligibility.
No, we're responsible for that.
Mr. Chairman, just a comment. I want to congratulate you, Sheriff, for opening up the visitations again for the incarcerated persons that are in there. I'm sure the families and themselves will be very grateful for that. So thank you.
Anybody else have any comments to the sheriff before we go into his res? All right, sir. JP 5.
JP 5 is a resolution authorizing us to enter into a contract with Seneca Stone Corp to pave a portion of the parking lot that's coming apart and was subject to being dug up with the new power line that had to be installed, changing the power of the public safety complex. But if you've been out there, you know that our parking lot, when you first enter the employee area, is beat up really bad and beyond its useful life. We're not paving the entire driveway or parking lot, just the section that really has to be done at this point.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes.
Hang on, James. I got Trish here and then you.
I was just curious, do you have like a master facilities plan for the jail in terms of are you aware of other upcoming capital expenditures and how does that, what does that look like, I guess?
We always have, needs at the jail, and it's an aging building. Some of the repairs that we're going to have to make in the future are going to be costly. We generally address those at budget time and try to budget, for the priorities going into the next year. But as far as laying out a capital plan, years ahead, I think that would be a great idea to try to budget for those things, because we have some very significant repairs coming up between a chiller in the jail that's going to need to be replaced in a few years, roofs, other portions of the parking lot. It's a it's getting to be an older building and all of these things are, needing repair. So I think it's absolutely something that we should be looking at. And I've also said, as far as our cars, I think we really ought to be looking at cars moving forward and budgeting for them year to year, because there's a significant amount of cars that we're going to need moving forward too. So I would be for that, to work with the legislature to put some type of plan together and budget for that.
James, go right ahead.
Yes. Sheriff, did we happen to talk with the highway department to see they were capable of doing any of this?
Yes, in fact, the highway superintendent actually secured the bid for us to do the parking lot. So they weren't actually able to do the paving, but he did secure the bid for us to have it paved.
Thank you.
And you obviously budgeted for this year to have this done, or?
Actually, this is money that was in our budget line. We put extra money for a potential roof repair that's not going to be done this year because we don't have the availability of a contractor to do it. Gary Duckett's still in the bid process. We're not going to make it in time to get the roof done. So we're going to have to push that down the road. We're anticipating doing this roof repair this year. We did put extra funding into the budget. We'll use this funding, but we're going to have to push the roof repair down the road. And I will add, I've had a conversation with a few of you, but as you can understand, I'm sure maintenance costs have been just through the roof for, a lot of the routine things we've done have cost so much more this year. With inflation and everything, we're burning through our maintenance budget pretty quickly, unfortunately, but we do have this money there because of the roof project that's not going to go.
Any other discussion, comments? All in favor of the JP5? Aye. Any opposed? Carried. Anybody have anything else for the sheriff? Lydia.
Thank you. I was asked to bring this to the meeting tonight because it seems to fit. And I appreciate you hearing this. This is a letter from Michael Ciccarello, President, Onondaga County Deputy Sheriff's Police Association, where he writes that during the New York State Fair this year, the State Department of Ag and Markets has elected to not allow off-duty police officers to carry department or personally owned firearms on the property. Written in this letter, this is a complete and total violation of our constitutional rights. As OCSPA president, I request that all OCSPA members boycott and not attend the New York State Fair for this ridiculous violation of our constitutional rights. It is our right, not only as citizens, but more so as police officers, to carry for the purposes of defending ourselves and others. We should not, and I will not attend to the fair unarmed, the same as I wouldn't walk through Destiny ever again without being armed. Law enforcement is being murdered and assassinated across this country. Mass shootings are becoming increasingly more common, and especially more common in and around events like the fair. I believe that the citizens of the state want their off-duty police armed at these types of events. Our governor has weaponized her Department of Ag and Markets against common sense and safety for the purposes of furthering her political campaign, and we don't have to just sit back and take it. This governor and the policies she supports are the reason that police officers are murdered and that hardcore violent criminals are allowed to walk among us without any fear of repercussions for their crimes. As citizens of this country, we have to keep the right to keep and bear arms. As citizens of the state and a legal concealed carry permit holder, you have the right to carry your firearm. This is without question unconstitutional and in total violation of the Supreme Court decision. The least we can do is to fight back against this type of attack on our constitutional rights, is to not attend the fair and not give them our money. Law Enforcement Day is now just a political ploy to make it appear that this state administration supports us. They don't. If they did, the criminals would not be given more rights than the law-abiding citizens, and that's where this governor is leading us. Fight back and stand together against being disarmed and boycott the fair. Michael Ciccarello, President, Onondaga County Deputy Sheriff's Police. Thank you.
Any other comments or concerns, questions for the sheriff? Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Pledge 1, you'll notice is on here for information only. Everybody was given a copy this ledge one in their mailbox. They also received this on their emails. This is for information only. It's a resolution opposing recently enacted New York State legislation regulating legal authorized concealed carry gun permits and banning concealed carry in the public places as being an unconstitutional attack on the rights of law-abiding citizens. Again, this is for information only tonight. This ledge one will be brought up at the full ledge meeting. Again, just a reminder that you did get a copy in your emails and a written copy in your mailbox. Anybody else have anything before this committee?
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you.
5 minutes, please. Hopefully, maybe.
Briefly.
Because it's you, Chris, I'm gonna hang on.
Not true, not true.
I wasn't sure either. I really was unclear.
All right, just heads up that Chambers is unmuted.
My best to stay out of it. That's all I can say, because I have to, you know.
I was like, did we say something?
No, did we tell them we kick them out? or-
I was like,
I think it was
something?
insinuated.
Oh.
Yeah. Guys, I think, anybody? So, wait, Chairman,
I think we'll be right back.
we'll be right back. All right, we'll wait. I mean, he's the founder of the feast. Or wait, maybe I am right now.
I think you are right now.
I am. Ooh, in that case,
Those shoes.
I'm starting without him. Call the meeting to order. So it looks like we have everybody. So minutes to approve.
Move it.
Second.
A motion and second. I assume there's no discussion. All in favor of the minutes?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Let me see, is Katie or Cheryl on? I don't think so, unless they're their iPhone. No, so, I guess I just bring up that you guys all read it, but I just bring up for the sake of posterity or whatever, that we're gonna have a couple primaries this year. And so that will be an additional expense forced upon us that we'll have to provide for. So any questions for, that I can refer to Katie or Cheryl, or discussion about BOE? Hearing none, we can move on to Sheila, but Amanda's probably on. Oh, Sheila's on too, right?
Yeah, Sheila's
Goes
on.
on.
Hello. So
Hello.
employee recognition luncheon is scheduled for Friday, September 16th, from 12 to 2 p.m. at the Springside Inn. All legislators are welcome. Please let me know as soon as possible so we can get a head count. So you can either email me, give me a call, or Amanda call, just so we know. 3 policies were sent from the finance department. Please contact Mary Beth with any questions. There's also some other policies on. The person that wrote them, whatever the title is at the top, whether it's treasurer, buildings, finance department, you would need to contact them, or they are the ones that wrote them.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Sheila? Hearing none? Oh, you do?
And I guess this isn't exactly for Sheila Smith, the clerk, but I am curious, you know, when you just referenced these policy changes to contact the oversight committee or the oversight department and the department head for information. I am curious as to why these don't go to the committee of origin, you know, where the group is most affected by the policy change.
Well, because all policies go through government ops.
Okay, so if I could,
You sure?
I think we'll let Sheila off the hook, and looks like Fred is itching to get involved in this. So if there's no other questions for Sheila,
That's fine.
is that good? So hearing no other questions for Sheila, thanks, Sheila.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Sheila. So you would think Sheila and I tag team this, because I was going to talk on just this subject. Because in the office, there's been a discussion going on about possibly amending the rules of order. With all the policies that went through, some went through last month, some are going through this month. Shireen has various teams working on a lot of other policies. So you're going to start to see more and more policies. And that happens every 3 or 4 years. That's when we get together and go over policies. The rules don't really tell us what happens to policies and where they go. So the discussion is on 2 sides. There's one group that believes, as Ms. McNabb Coleman was saying, maybe they should go through, let's call it the oversight committee. And to give 2 examples, last month, there's a policy about name changes. Maybe that should have gone to buildings and grounds. Today, there's 2 policies on HIPAA, and there's another one on compliance. Maybe that should go through Health and Human Services. What the practice has been, and again, it's not been codified in the rules, what the practice has been is for all the policies that go through government operations. If this committee has issues or concerns, or they want the, let me call it the advice and consent of the oversight committee, they can pick up another word, refer it to the oversight committee, say Health and Human Services or Buildings and Grounds, have them review it, come up with a list of questions or comments or thoughts, send that to government ops, and then have government ops consider it. So what the discussion on the 6th floor has been, partly in the county attorney's office, is maybe we should have a rule change to address this, so that in 3 or 4 years from now, when we go through the policy reviews again, we don't have the same question. Yes.
So if I could, I'm trying to think back to when I first began in the legislature. I feel as though we did the oversight committee of origin, and then did the formalized policy change, decision-making at government ops. Like, so government ops wasn't the first to see it. We were the last. So I thought that's why. So when I'm looking at these now, I'm like, well, I need to, this is gonna take forever. I gotta see the old policy. But I also want to know what triggered it. What is it just housekeeping? Is there a need? I would like to hear that discussion had before we're all looking at each other going, what do you think about HIPAA?
So
let's review this, but.
So I can address some of that. Some of the policy changes from last month were to line up with the fact that there's no administrator. So anything that required a report to the administrator, that was changed to chair and designee. So maybe those are like housekeeping.
Right.
Then there've been a lot of, the HIPAA policy may be pretty involved. And maybe that's what the body wants, is the first referral, if you will, to the oversight committee, then back to, or then to government ops. So maybe this is a timely discussion at this point, what this body is looking for and how they want those resolutions with policies to move forward.
So I'd like to comment on that if I could. Actually, I'd like to address those when they come up in the resolutions. Simply because I didn't know about it till very recently, and I think it needs more time to be digested. So if we could sort of expedite the process and take those as they come along.
That was the end of my report, unless anybody has any questions.
Beautiful. That's what I was hoping for. Any other questions for Fred? I'm sure we're going to get back in and have more questions for Fred, but regarding the county attorney's office specifically, any questions that anybody has? Okay, hearing none, we'll get back to that. Sue, unless the iPhone, I don't see her. The one thing I wanted to comment is Mrs. McNabb Coleman, you commented about the space, and I thought that was a good idea, and I think the Dreams Project will have a significant impact on that space. So other than that, I don't have anything. Questions regarding the clerk's office, DMV? Okay, this is going too good. Something's going. Tom, you're next.
Good evening, everyone. You have my report. If you don't have any questions on that, I can go ahead with my resolution.
So if there's no questions for, sort of global questions for Tom, we'll move right into the resolutions. Anybody have any? Mr. Chair.
I just want to congratulate Tom and thank Tom for working with Shireen. The both of them will work together with other people, but the main two people working on all these policy changes, and it's taken a long time. But I want to thank you very much, Tom, and certainly Shireen. So thank you. Thank you very much.
So you have one, right? GOA.
Yes.
So let's. How about let's maybe somebody move it for discussion. Motion. Is there a second? Second motion and a second. So if you could explain, please.
Yeah, sure. So just to give you some background, this is obviously revolving around the building notification and paging resolution for tonight at the county office building. So Shireen and I met to discuss some technology-related items as it related to the county emergency action plan. And as we went through the plan, we determined what items were accurate or in needs of updating. And we found that the plan references kind of an antiquated emergency notification system through an overhead paging system. And it throughout the plan, it references these old analog overhead speakers as well as a Mitel phone system, which we had back in, I believe, in the early 2010 era. So it's an older system. Since then, of course, we've upgraded to the 8x8 phone system. And what we found is that overhead analog speakers, they do not integrate with the 8x8 solution. Okay, so that's kind of where we're at right now. We are, in the event of an emergency, we can issue a notification through the 8x8 desk phones. So that's great for anyone that's at their desk, but it doesn't deal with the issues of, being in a public space throughout the building or, in a stairwell. So, or in other situations like that. So basically the solution I'm proposing tonight would be to essentially replace all the old analog units with digital IP speakers and the cabling costs associated with that. So with the resolution tonight, IT will be picking up a good chunk of the cost for the actual hardware for the speakers and some of the cabling. And we'd be looking to get some of the cost of the additional cabling tonight. Just a couple other items in regards to this. All the infrastructure and equipment that is included in the resolution, if the building did undergo a reconstruction, we could utilize all of that infrastructure and equipment going forward. And I do have a demonstration of the system set up downstairs on the 5th floor. So I would invite you all to come and check it out and see it in action if you're interested.
Okay, discussion on GO8. Questions for Tom? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, so I believe Schwab is our last but not least with veterans. He's on the phone. Yes, sir.
All right, good evening. I was on vacation last month, thankfully, so got to take a little break. Next week, I'll be gone working with the New York Guard. You probably saw an email about Citizen Preparedness Corps. That was a contact I made when I was on the COVID mission, so hopefully we can get something going with that, but that's not official stuff. So we've been maintaining steady operations in the office. Probably the most significant thing is we hired a new deputy director is Jennifer Wilder. She was the veteran service assistant, and I had several good candidates for that position. I left it open about 2 months in order to get a good pool. And ultimately I went with her. I had a couple others that were close, but was able to bring her on board, and it's been great. She has definitely picked up and risen to the new position. Absolutely. Unfortunately, the local Disabled American Veteran chapter has disbanded, and they had a brunch earlier this month for that. And it's kind of a indicator of the way some veteran service organizations are going. Their enrollment is declining, and it's a challenge for younger veterans to join some of these organizations. It's one of the things that the Veteran Service Advisory Board and I have been talking about, trying to get some of these younger veterans involved. And hopefully with some initiatives in the future, we might be able to do a little bit to help out the veteran service organizations. But unfortunately, the local DAV chapter has disbanded. Now, we do still have DAV drivers in Auburn. Just because the chapter's gone doesn't mean there aren't still some drivers for the DAV. And the DAV brings veterans to local appointments, whereas our vet van brings veterans to the VA Medical Center in Syracuse. So that's, we coordinate with them for certain things as well. So if you have any veterans who are out there and they go to farmers markets, we have some coupons that are good for veterans. I saw that the Office for the Aging has handed all of theirs out. We still have some left. As people come in, we give them to the veterans in the office, trying to get out a little bit more and give them, I'm probably gonna go to the farmers market to hand some out right there to veterans as well. So with Jennifer moving up, that vacates the veteran service assistant position. And it was kind of a quick 2-week notice but our veteran service officer, Angelo Ervelina, decided that he was going to retire from the position, and he left earlier this month as well. So now we've got two part-time positions are vacant. They've been advertised. I put together the resolution, but I wasn't able to get them in before the suspense to get them before the committee. Not really that concerned about it because it does take a little while to get some applications in through the Civil Service Board. So you'll be seeing those resolutions come before the committee next month. ETS sponsorship is a program that tries to help veterans who are coming off, service members who are coming off active duty. If they're coming to our community, try and link them up with employment, not services, but, different housing, different needs that they would have coming into community if they're not from the community. Even if they are from the community, it's potentially help. And I'm going through training to be a sponsor. I'll finish that next week. And that is a national program. And we teamed with Cayuga, Ithaca County, and Broome County and Cortland County. I think were the others we teamed with. Cayuga is the lead on that. I think I announced that a couple months ago. And they are managing how that operates within our area, but we have teamed with them. Long range planning, Veterans Day is now 90 days away, which, everybody knows how quickly time goes by. And I'm working with the city on doing something a little bit extra with Veterans Day. It's still in preliminary planning, but should see more of that here in the future as well. Also working with the city of Auburn, the Veterans Memorial Park needs some upgrading. It's a city park, but we work with them. It was part of the original arrangement to put the memorials in place. They need to replace the retaining wall in the back, and a lot of the stones for the veterans are worn down. So we're working with them to come up with a plan to better recognize the veterans who served, who are acknowledged in the park. If you haven't heard, the PACT Act passed and was signed by the president, and that has to do with Camp Lejeune water contamination and the presumptives that go along with that. It also adds presumptives for burn pits and airborne contaminants for service in the Middle East. There's some radiation sites that I didn't even know about that are addressed in that PACT Act. And so we expect, and we actually have been getting more calls about, especially Camp Lejeune, because you can't log on to any website or watch commercials without seeing something about, Camp Lejeune water contaminations. Call us to join the class action lawsuit. And so we're fielding a lot of questions about that. That is all I have.
Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Kevin. It's Aileen McMahon Coleman. I just wanted to give a shout out to Mr. Ervelina. He definitely stepped up at a time when we were between leaders in the office. Very similar to Dale Courier. I asked him when I was chair if he could hang on for a couple days turned into a couple weeks, turned into a couple months. So I wish him well, and I thank him again for his time and hanging in with us during a difficult time and manning that office. So
yeah, he's definitely a loss. He was our qualified veteran service officer who had access to the VA database. And so Jennifer and I actually had to take a trip out to Canandaigua on Monday we have to do background investigations in order to gain that access. So yeah, he's missed in the office, but we'll pick back up as we move forward.
Very nice, Aileen.
Any other questions for Kevin? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Kev.
All right, so let's get into the resolutions. Cayuga Community College, that's to approve the collective bargaining agreement between the community college and the administrative professionals group. Entertain a motion for that.
I would like to refer GO1 to full legislative session. A couple of reasons. We talk about the successor agreement. And under the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whereas It refers to a copy of the tentative agreement between the parties attached. For some reason, I do not have that attachment.
Well,
And I printed all 55 pages.
Well, let's take it as its face value. There is a motion to refer
Full legislative session.
to the legislative session, GO1. Any seconds? Okay. Hearing no seconds, again, do we have a motion for GO1?
Proud of you all.
Chris, if I may, contracts are in the Dropbox and they're separate under contracts.
Thanks, Sheila.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
A motion, GO1?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I was wondering, well, thank you. So we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Now discussion on GO1. Nothing?
I was just wondering if we had any comments from the college that.
Hi, so good evening. My name is Kelly Albrecht. I'm the CFO from the college. Dr. Durant is taking a much needed week off. So if you have any questions, I just wanted to let you know that we are very happy to have settled with the APG union so quickly. We have 41 full-time members and 14 part-time members. And if you have any specific questions, I'm here to answer any of those.
Thank you. Any questions specific to the budget, the agreement? So this was negotiated and
It was
passed.
negotiated, it was passed very quickly for a 2.75 and a 2%, which is all budget.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so any further discussion? All right, so hearing no further discussion on GO1, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Without being able to review, I would have to oppose.
Okay. So the ayes have it, the video is opposed. Yeah. So moving into the clerk of the legislature resolutions. So this is where I wanted to talk about this. So there, GO 5, 6, and 7, or 5, 6, and 7 were added yesterday. So to be honest, initially I was inclined to pull them because I just think that people need to have time to review, especially when we're talking about amending policy. But now we get into this sort of referral to committee thing. So I'm looking for feedback. I definitely think they need to be discussed more, but I'll be looking for feedback regarding 5, 6, and 7. But let's start out with the 2, 3, and 4, again, fixed access policies, county investment policy, amending the Cayuga County accident reporting investigation policy. I think we've had time to review those. So if anyone wanted to offer those as a bundle, I would entertain 2, 3, and 4 as a bundle.
Move it.
Motion by Hans.
A second.
A second by Ms. McNabb Coleman. Any discussion on the bundle 2, 3, and 4? Yes, Trish.
I see Mary Beth here, and I was wondering if she could just kind of speak to these a little bit in terms of what has been updated and.
So, if we take one at a time, the accident reporting really, just kind of updated language with who to report to, what the forms are now called, that kind of thing. Not really any major changes. The only I would call more major change was we added in about taking photographs if at all possible, and reporting within 24 hours. Pam in my office has a specific timeline and needs that documentation so that we can be in compliance. So that's now more specific in the policy. So that one is really just kind of cleaning it up. The investment policy, typically I bring this every like November or December, because we have been shopping interest rates a lot, I would say, right now. We have some CDs that will mature September 1st. I started shopping those rates back in early July. A bank that we don't have in our investment policies had the best rate, so I'm amending to add them to the policy, so I'm allowed to put money into that bank. The county treasurer and I have met about a proposal of what funds we're moving where, and he is in agreement. So that was just adding an additional bank. Based on discussions with him, he's really hoping to kind of diversify our banking and include any local bank and give them the opportunity at county funds. So we're gradually stepping in that direction, trying to be fair to everybody and also try to maximize our interest. So that's why that one's changing. Capital asset policy, there's a new governmental accounting standard. So that one, we had to address leased assets. If you remember back when they presented the audit, the accounting rules are changing for leased assets, and we do have to capitalize many leases, including things that are even just a 1-year lease. So when we rent space, or if we are renting space to another entity, we have to include that in our capital policy. The other thing is our policy was silent with regard to leasehold improvements. Typically, those are things like capital project work with roads and that kind of thing. We didn't have any useful life established for that. So I consulted with our auditors to confirm what we selected was appropriate. And so we've added that into the capital asset policy.
Any further questions regarding the bundle 2, 3, and 4? Hearing none. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, so DO 5, 6, 7, there's a couple ways we can go about this. I can pull them. They can just come back again before the committee next month. We can do what council told us was an option, and I have discussed with the chairman and some others. We can refer them to their respective oversight committees for this time. I'm not certain that that is not a cumbersome and ineffective, but if we are going to review the policies, then we can figure it out as a whole. So I'm open to discussion regarding 5, 6, and 7. If you guys want to refer them to committee, how you want to refer them to ways, and HHS, and I have no idea who the breach notification, that would be
HHS as well.
Okay. Sounded, I thought we were taking doors.
Me too.
Yeah. Sorry, bad joke. So any quick, I'm all ears, 5, 6, and 7. Anyone want to move? I'll take it this way. Do you want to move GO5 to HHS? What?
Tomorrow. Yeah. Tomorrow.
I mean, it's tomorrow night, right?
Tomorrow night.
Yeah, again, I'm not trying to give yes, sir.
Move back to their respective committees.
All right, so there's a motion. So can we do that? 5, 6, and 7 just sent to respective committees.
Can I ask a point of clarification?
Yeah.
Is it to refer them to the respective committees to make a decision, or to review and provide, I don't know, report or information back to government ops?
Well,
Yes.
okay, sure, but so I thought maybe I'm the last one to get the memo here, but I thought the whole idea was, because if we're going to refer them to handle their own business, that's where it should be. But I thought we had to entertain these in government ops. So I guess what I'm saying is we're asking for their advice and consent and then send it back to government ops.
That I think that's the question, yes, because the practice has been to have government ops move the policies forward.
Okay.
And whether it was where they started there and then came to ops, or they came to ops and get referred out and then come back. I mean, it's kind of the same thing, but
But I'm just inclined to agree with Aileen that it seems, I'd rather have it the other way because they have the, so to speak,
Is this open for discussion?
1 second. I'm going to have the chair and then you.
I agree with Aileen. I think it should go to the oversight committee first. Let them discuss it and then let it be sent back to a government ops.
With their
It's crazy to do a three-way switch with their comment. If they desire to do that. The final choice is with the committee. That's what I would say. Maybe I'm.
Why does it have to come back to us? Why can't it just go to their respective committee and then to the full ledge?
Agreed, but I think that council is advising us that we are the committee of jurisdiction. So it has to come back because it's policy changes. Correct me if I'm wrong.
that's correct. The practice has been that the policy changes go from ops to the legislature. Yes.
Yes.
I wonder, moving ahead, would it make sense to think about rescheduling ops to come right before Ways, not the same night? But come before Ways. So we've had these other subcommittees meetings. They've been through the discussion, and whenever there's policy, it's all in the same cycle, right? So we're not, waiting 2 months for something to change, right? Or to approve a. See what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Because government ops is always, it used to be always first in the month, and maybe we should think about it being after some of these other committees. Just a thought.
So,
Doesn't help right now.
yeah, I mean, that's definitely what we can take into consideration with the overall. Overhaul?
Overall.
I don't think that worked out right.
This is, Fred, you said past practice, so it's not a policy. So if it's past practice, we can change it anytime we want to, right?
We can, but yes, you can, but at some point, there's like three things going on, right? At some point, you may want to consider cementing it in your rules of order so that every 3 or 4 years when the policies come up, you're not spending a lot of time discussing which way you want it.
I guess what I'm trying to say is the ones that should be under the different committees, let them go to the committees and let the committees vote on them, rather than send them back to government ops. So that's kind of ridiculous. Why do we have committees?
The legislature can pass that.
There's nothing to pass because it's just past policy. We can just change it, right? It's not a.
And you can change it every 3 or 4 years, yes.
All right, so I think maybe we are talking about multiple different things at once. So just for me, because I need to keep track. The motion at hand is to send GO 5, 6, and 7 to their respective committees. There's a motion and there's a second. Correct? Hans made the motion. Was there a second?
I think Aileen.
Did I second it?
Yeah.
I did not have a second.
Oh, I don't.
Oh, I thought you did. I thought you did.
If she did, I can go ahead and
No,
take
I
that.
went
as a
up.
second.
Maybe I was
Say
hoping.
But I just want to be clear for if this passes, I will put the 2 on HHS tomorrow night, or will they be referred back to the respective committee next month?
It's your motion, Hans.
You want to do it this month?
Whatever. Doesn't matter to me.
I mean,
Yeah, I say we get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah, address the issue.
the new way come in.
Possible.
Yeah, I agree.
So, but we're not there yet. Does anyone want a second? Hans is,
My only concern with that is the individuals on HHS may not have enough time
Move to adjourn.
these policies.
Hurry it up.
yeah, I know that, I mean, so I understand. I don't want these to go unaddressed, but I also don't want to push this forward without giving my committee adequate time to review it. So if you guys don't want to take it up, that's fine with me. Yes,
I
ma'am.
could comment. So these were just added on the 9th, which was yesterday. So to me, that's an impossible amount of time for us to really review these and think about it, let alone understand the trigger and what people are interested in doing. changes. I think that's not helpful, right, to just move it to tomorrow. I mean, I think that that's not fair, I guess.
Because we're doing it to them, what happened to us?
Right.
Yeah.
And we're really, I mean, if it was maybe even 2 days away, I'd feel more comfortable.
That's fair.
So I guess, and the other thing about them being added, which I'm confused about, is, these are policy changes. Clearly, they have had to have been worked on. So this was a real short notice for, clearly, I mean, that's a lot of work to go through, make the changes, do the resolution. And, I guess it would have been easier if we had a heads up and by whom, I don't know, but.
Understood.
Yeah.
I'll take that back to the various groups.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Chairman, I jumped in.
I think
Help me out, Fred.
I agree with Aileen. Yeah, 1 day is not enough to refer or
Works for me.
review two of the policies. And then the last one was regarding the foreclosure policy.
Yeah, that's something we really gotta, again, I just want everyone to have adequate time to digest it.
I would at least like time to review for at least the Ways and Means.
So how about we
Full-
just,
full
we
length.
don't, if it's feasible, we do nothing.
Pull the gun things.
What's that?
Pull them.
I'll pull them. I pull them. Now I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye, aye, aye.
Take a breath.
He just goes, oh.